So welcome again, everybody. And we have an hour to share about grief and heartache and ritual and life and things like that. There'll be a bit of time for questions. There'll be time for a little bit of guided practice as well. And hopefully you can hear me okay. And that's all. I think that's going to be what it is. I'll speak as loud as I can. Before we dive into the teaching per se, I want to briefly mention that there are some good things happening with Ancestral Medicine, and our team is working hard to cook up useful offerings. One starts next week, and its practices for grieving and heartache is directly, it's like this kind of like lesson 1 of 5, and the course is the next 4, and that gets into really tangible practices and ways to work with the terrain. So that's open for registration. We're also having the 4th of 4 seasons for the Initiations of Life of Ritual course that runs in January, and that's open. And we have a free winter solstice ritual, and, on winter solstice, as you might imagine, respect to Southern Hemisphere people. I know it's summer down there, and there's a lot of self-paced courses. We've created a lot of them this year, and so those are available. There's a lot of content, and we'll open the Ancestral Lineage Healing course soon. It begins at the start of February, but we have a considerable discount for early registration happening. If you have any draw to the practitioner training in the coming year, it'd be cohort 7, and that course is one of the requirements. So heads up that those are the things happening. And if you ever want to connect with ancestral healing work, there's a whole directory of lovely practitioners around the world. So those are the happenings. About the subject tonight, what I want to start by saying is that although grief is normal, and in a sense it's a kind of unavoidable response or process for things that happen to us, it's also learned the skills of how to grieve, which means it's learnable. And it means that the way I view it is a fundamental life skill. And it's not one that I got like any orientation to growing up as a American settler colonialist ancestor white dude. Maybe you got some orientation growing up on how to grieve well. But I think a lot of folks get somewhere between 0 and not very much orientation to that. But it's a fundamental life skill, like how to eat well, how to exercise, how to handle your stress, how to do relationships, how to handle your finances, stuff like you need to navigate life. And in that way, I have had to do personally, and I imagine you have, and continue to do a lot of cultural catch-up, where you're patching areas where you didn't get those skills growing up. So grieving is like that. It's sometimes conceived of as like this ephemeral, like really, heavy, catalytic, demanding kind of thing, but it's just going to happen to you. So like, get ready. Sure, but it's also, you can learn it. You don't have to learn to swim by being thrown in the pool. You can. And that's how it comes for a lot of us, that it's how it came for me. But for a lot of people, it's like you just had a terrible childhood. So sorrow and abandonment and heartache was an early companion. Or your mom suddenly died when you were 8 years old and you just never saw her again, or whatever it might be. Things that are just like, oh, there's a before and after timeline. Big grief just came to your life. And so doesn't mean you were equipped, but it means you're oriented, you're experienced with it. Whether or not you had the skills, maybe you learned them, maybe you didn't. You didn't have a choice. It's also possible to step in anyways. Like in my own life, I haven't lived through war. Both of my parents are still alive. I'm an able-bodied person. I'm able to do meaningful work. I have the freedom to pursue my interests. There's a lot of ways in which I haven't been just rocked by life. But I can say that like anyone who's being emotionally honest, I've been born into a lot of unacknowledged grief. So if you haven't been made to grieve, you kind of maybe have an option to like not give attention to that aspect of life. But as soon as you do turn attention there, for me at least, speak from my own experience, suddenly there's all the things that my parents couldn't grieve because their parents couldn't grieve them. Because whiteness in the United States is like a hollow amnesia kind of non-identity that creates a wake of sorrow and pain and requires avoiding that pain to continue. And so suddenly there's like, oh, the whole cultural soup I'm born into is premised upon avoiding sorrow. So then there's a big backlog, or all the just isolating conditioning of individualism in the United States, of being a dude who's not supposed to like lead with strong emotion or whatever the unhelpful straight dude conditioning is. All that, not to mention the catastrophe that we're living with the earth and how we are. So there's actually plenty to grieve about without losing my parents in a car accident when I'm 5 years old. And so as a result of realizing kind of early on, I'm like, whoa, the culture is a mess. I'm not even sure how to orient, but let me have the thing that isn't the mainstream culture, and then I'll figure it out from there. And so I've been in therapy for probably 25 years, and it's still very much an ongoing thing to be emotionally like honest in the moment and present with my experience. And I've seen it again and again and again, that when I'm actually able to do that, my life is better. My relationships are more honest and real and more nourishing. I'm a better parent, I'm a better husband, I'm a better teacher, and I'm more willing to just be with what's hard. And what I want to say about it isn't, it's not that my story matters so much, but I share about that because we don't have to wait for grief to find us, because it's already here. You can just turn attention to it instead of having it like demand your attention. And how to be with all of it is a learnable life skill, like anything else. And if you haven't learned it, you can choose to learn it. And that said, I want to say a few things about what do we even mean by grief? Because sometimes I think we come with a too narrow of an understanding of what we're even talking about. Then I want to say a few things of why I think it's really beneficial in non-obvious ways, maybe, to make it a priority with the learning around grieving. So for the first thing, I mean, here's my top 5 about the kinds of things we grieve for. And notice what has resonance for you and what might be like, oh, I hadn't considered that, right? The obvious one, the one that's culturally like what people think of, is somebody died, like a loss. The loss of a pet. Of course, losses of other humans you love. It can be the loss of a famous person, somebody you love and respect just got assassinated, or they just died in a less intense way. And with that, there's also the death. Excuse me, the death of what we hoped were for them or what they meant to us. You might have an abusive parent die, and you don't actually feel that sad that they're dead. It's a relief. You feel kind of safer, actually. However, now, the little irrational part of you that wanted them to be able to love you better now knows you're never really ever going to get that from them in that way. It doesn't mean you can't have it in the world in some form. But sometimes with the loss of another person, what we're really grieving is the loss of this kind of hope or dream that we had. And that is a second thing, that is the loss of our dreams, our hopes, and our expectations. And that can happen with relationships, with traditions. I've been involved with traditions before and really invested. It's a kind of relationship. It's like going beyond dating, like you're doing initiations, you're getting involved. And then at a certain point, it's like, oh, I thought it was going to play out differently here. I thought this was going to be different. Like the energy of a divorce or of a career path. You're like 45, you're 50 now, and you're like, I don't actually like myself when I do this. I know it's late in life, but I got to set it down. And that feels sad because I'm not 15 anymore. So whatever it is, sometimes there's this loss of a hope or a vision that we had, which can be really sorrowful, but it's not always culturally acknowledged. Doing this list is partly a way of saying, if we want to learn to really embrace the good medicine that is being with heartache and sorrow, it requires validating internally and with loved ones, ideally, flavors of grief that aren't culturally blessed and sanctioned all the time. And a third one, my top 5 here personally, is when we feel the pain of others. And maybe you are not like me and you don't obsessively watch the news. I try not to just read the news all the time, but what I notice is that there's a lot of pain, of course, in the world, a lot of hardship, but I'll look at stories, I'm interested, I'm like, oh, I'm paying attention. And then like every 10 or 20 or 30 times I read about a thing, there'll be something that emotionally lands. It's like, oh, suddenly I'm there and I'm taken by it for a minute. And we don't always know why, but it's one example of the way that the pain of others is also, it's capable of lighting up our own pain, but it's also that we're all tangled up with one another. So we're not so individual in that way. So to say that this is my grief, this is your grief, it's really tidy, that comes from a really unhelpful extreme individualism. It's important to challenge. Yeah. And the last 2 things by way of what do we even mean by grief? Another, for me at least, is just the times we're living in, the amount of loss of biological diversity, of beauty, of nuance and holiness on this planet because of our confusion and our unwillingness to make the needed changes. It's really that we're living through a catastrophe. And I'm parenting 2 young girls, and I haven't even really started to go there too much yet. But the weight of like, sorry kiddos, you're being born into a very difficult mess, and I'm sorry for it. And so there are so many ways in which we could spend the rest of the month talking about ecological sorrow, or just the ways that we were impacted directly, physically, but on all the other levels too. So it's a backdrop thing, and it hasn't ever been like that for humans. That's a new thing. We just haven't had that one in the mix. So it's big, and there's no getting around it. It's going to be like that at least for the rest of all of our lives, including the youngest person on the call. So it's part of what is right now. We don't, like, the square one of like grief skills is tell the truth about what's going on. So if it's like, damn, this is really relentlessly kind of overwhelming and sad, well, then that's what we say about it. And things move from there. So you tell the truth about it. And the last thing that comes to mind is we grieve sometimes just because being here on earth is a kind of exile in a way. That doesn't have to be. We can have a really non-dual, deep immersion in the truth that it's one reality, and maybe you even have some dedicated practice, or you're like inherently super spiritual and you can stabilize that. It's not just like a really good 15 minutes you had of heart openness, but it's like how you live. And so in that sense, maybe you don't have a sense of missing the spaciousness and connectivity of not being incarnate. But there's a kind of density of being in these bodies. Like, I have a cough, I've had a headache all day, my shoulder hurts from parenting. Like, I could just like cry for a while. I'd be a little awkward because I'm guiding the call, but maybe it's fine because it's about grief, but I'm not going to go there. But just about like body pain. And so, and I imagine that's true for a lot of people on the call, just limitations. And so sometimes it's just hard to be here. Even when like you didn't read any bad news and nobody died today, and like you don't have anything to pin it to, there's just like a sense of, oh, there's a lot of density. Like, I remember where I came from, I didn't feel as dense all the time. And the Spirit's like, hang in there. There's good stuff to be had on earth too. It's like, okay, hang in there. So, for example, those are some of the things we grieve for. I imagine there's at least one thing on that list that applies to you. So it's like we're all, it's just part of our human experience. It's not like, oh, grief, that's like not comfy. I want to have as little of that as possible. And when it comes, I'll like be a good person and feel it so it can be done. And then I can get back to not feeling it. You can do that, but it's going to come find you again. So it's part of our humanity. Even if you're being really like a good person. So a second thing is like the pain of the world and our pain. I know I said it, but they're really all tangled up together. And so it means that, and I say this as a therapist, as a psychology person, like there's a strong tendency, if someone is in a therapy session, like you imagine in your mind a therapy session, and your client's like, or you're the therapist, doesn't matter, you're the fly on the wall, and the client's like, I'm sad, and they're feeling like some sadness. The therapist is really understandably gonna might just be curious and empathic. Well, what's going on? You seem sad. It's great. But there might be a story that creeps in that's like, what's it about? And that's not a bad question, but sometimes it's like, there were these puddles by our house where there were these tadpoles, and then they came and they built this house, and I could hear the frogs, and there's something in the sound of the frogs that just like, made me think of how lonely I was as a child. But it wasn't really that. It's all the kids who are lonely right now, all the kids who are lonely watching their screens and their parents aren't paying attention to them. And I just thought of my marriage, and I thought about how lonely I feel. And so sometimes it's like all these things all at once. Like you're driving to work and you hit a butterfly, and its beautiful body just smashes into your windshield. And you're like, I hate modernity. I hate it. And I'm stuck in it. Whatever. So it's not always going to make sense. And it's not always going to be our grief. It's just part of the soup that we're in. And so one of the skills is to not not block or interfere too heavily with the flow of sorrow when it's present by needing it to justify itself. Be like, what are you coming with? Why are you sad? Like, what's your story? And the story might be like, have you read the news? Have you listened to the frogs this week? And then it's like, oh, well, it's like that. So you back up. And a final thing, in a general way, is like grief is not time linear either. I've been guiding ancestral healing work. It's funny. And I didn't set out as a kid to be like, I'm going to be the ancestor guy or whatever. Like, it wasn't a life goal, but I'm happy with it. But it's been a major part of my adult life to be helping others to heal up and reconnect with their ancestors, right? And one thing I've seen from that again and again in the last 20 some years is emotions will wait hundreds and hundreds of years to be felt. And they'll just sit and like, oh, you want to relate not just individually, you want to relate as a lineage. You want to get to know your people. You want that sense of belonging. Great. Well, it means participating in the backlog of what hasn't been metabolized, what hasn't been felt yet. It's all the good stuff as well. Like there's buried joy and beauty and silliness and all the fun stuff. But you can't pick and choose. You're like, do you want to be part of the team? If you want a group experience, it means you're showing up for the fullness of it. And so if they're like, let me tell you a story about the last person who lived and died on the other side of the water, and how it was for them, and then how it was for their child. So pull up a chair and grab a Kleenex because you're going to need it. You know, that kind of thing. And there's a way in which emotion will wait for so long. That's great. It's really good news. It means that the possibility of deep belonging is still present. We just have to show up for to feel what's going on and be present with it. So it's an excuse me. Another way of saying that it's not personal, it's not linear, we don't need to make a name for the sorrow that comes, right? Okay. There's not enough time in the next half hour to be like, here's a bunch of skills on navigating grief and all that. If that is something that you have resonance with, that's exactly what we're going to do in the short course coming up. But what I do want to say is based on my experience and my experiences supporting others. I want to speak to 5 ways that I feel like it's really, it makes a difference to choose to prioritize this as a life skill. And one is you'll know yourself better. Like you're going to sleep better at night. You tend to be less, who knows? People would have sleep problems, but you know what I mean, metaphorically. And you'll be probably less neurotic and less compartmentalized, more emotionally honest. Like on just a body level, being willing to be present for the fullness of our experience around grief. Just in general, talking about grief and heartache will lead to better health and more stress. Because when you compartmentalize parts of your life, you push it away. I've seen it with my parents. I see with so many people. Oh my God. Like, look at the people in your life who you find annoying. Sorry to be like that, but I'm sure there's some people like that. If you look through a lens of kindness, how many of them have become annoying because they're avoiding pain? And their traits that are off-putting or difficult to be with are traits that have developed because it's hard for them to just sit with their pain and their heartache. So in that way, we'll just be more at ease with ourselves. It's psychologically good, in other words, and physically good. A second thing is that if it's your goal to be an elder, if it's your goal to be a wise human being, to be like an emotional adult, or even a wise person, I think it's a great life goal. It's not like something that magically happens. To people who end up having some measure of wisdom by the time they die usually have done a lot of courageous work in some way or another to make choices over and over in that direction that support that. And one of the things you're going to need to do, if that's a life goal, is to recognize that all the different experiences in the world have some kind of reflection in yourself, including the things that you would prefer to reject. Because people who are wise in general They're not like, yeah, I got this wisdom and perspective, and I'm better than these other people. They're fundamentally worse. And like whatever they're doing is foreign to me. I mean, who would say it that way? But when people who, at least I trust, who are like wise and kind, um, tend to have more of a stance of like, yeah, these troublesome energies, they also exist within me, and they're tricky, they're hard to be with, but they're part of what is, and we need to figure out together how to be with them. And so there's a sense that nothing is fundamentally foreign to you, that you see that the inner is as vast as the outer. And when you're doing that kind of inquiry, it means that the shattering grief, the grief that just doesn't give you the choice whether or not to regulate your experience. It's the grief that really, just the lightning strike that things are before and after. And that kind of loss and change, sudden change, is part of the human experience. And when you think of people who are wise and kind, and people who bring heartache to them, they're like, oh, hey, wise, kind person, like, I got a question. Like, my child died last week. I don't even know how to function. Any words of wisdom? Whatever that person says or does next, like, that's one indicator about whether or not they have any wisdom going on and kindness. If they're like, oh, that's very, I'm sorry, it's bad that happened, you should do some meditation, you're going to be like, oh, bad answer, like, not kind. Like, there's a need to get messy with the pain that's part of the human experience, if it's your goal to be wise. If it's not, you can try to avoid it, and you might be able to for some time. But you might as well move toward it if that's your plan, right? And if you move toward it when it comes anyways, you probably have a little bit more ability to navigate. You're like, oh, this is that overwhelming, flooding, can't even think clearly thing I've read about. Noted. It doesn't make it, it's like it's going to be easy, but it's possible. You have a little bit more orientation within it. A third out of 5 things, and it's kind of like my plug for making it a priority, is if it's your goal in life to be an ethical person, and I hope it is. I've been studying religion and spirituality and psychology for, I don't know, I'm 45 now, I think. Yeah, I'm 45, for over 25 years. And it's kind of the summary is like, cultivate good character, try to be ethical in a really like multi-dimensional, really interesting soul level way. But at the end of the day, like, good character is kind of where it's at. If I get like a 1-sentence summary of all of it. It's not always straight. Excuse me. It's not always straightforward. But if that's a goal, you're like, yeah, I want to, and I don't want to just be wise. Like, I want to be a good person. I want to do the right thing. Like, I want to be loving and kind, but when pressed, I want to make a courageous and kind decision that I'll feel good about later. And the people who know me will be like, yeah, look at that person. I respect them. They're doing the right thing. If you want that, learning how to grieve well is really important, because if we don't give care and presence to our heartache and our pain, there's a risk that we become resentful. There's a risk that we become bitter, and that we become shut down, or that we take pain and make it into a story of victimhood. I'm not saying people aren't genuinely harmed and victimized, but it's a somewhat different thing for that to become one's fundamental identity. And so there's a way in which loss and sorrow and pain, especially if we have been served by life a larger than average dose of it. There's a real risk that how we are with that will get in the way of our development of good character. You can indulge resentment and bitterness for a time, but moment to moment experience over time starts to become habit, starts to become your character. And if you're like fronting wisdom, but you're actually kind of a bitter person because you feel wronged by the world, sooner or later the disconnect will come out in weird ways. So if you want to be ethical, as like deeply ethical, not just like I follow the rules, then learning how to be with grief is really important because it'll have a big impact on how your character develops. Yeah. And another plug here for making this a priority is that there'll be more intimacy in your life. And what I mean by it is that the people who are vulnerable in the world and the places in your own psyche that feel vulnerable, that are vulnerable, will trust you more if you're able to be with sorrow and heartache. It's like there's a whole layer of reality that becomes visible. Like you have your X-ray vision or something, your emotional intelligence allows for a whole spectrum of experience to appear. You start to become the person that the children instinctively trust because there's something congruent and warm and kind about your vibe. And we just moved like 10 weeks ago, something like that, to Spain, and had a hard week. It's a lot been going on this week, and people have shown up really well. I mean, they've been really kind and generous. It's like it's disarming to my like lonely pessimism to have like these people showing up and be like, let us bring you a meal, or like, let us help you. I'm like, oh my God, like, sure, you can. And not like, oh, what do I owe you? Or I'll get you back next time. Or just like, I received that gift of generosity. Thanks. Like, I feel you caring about me. I accept. And what it started to do, we've just been here a little bit of time. There are moments where others, just a little bit socially, are starting to share their pain about what's hard for them. Be like, oh yeah, this and that. Our kids are in school together. And my mom's dying. I'm like, oh, your mom's dying. Like, how's that? How are you? And when you feel this in relationships, you all know what I'm talking about. When you get to a point in a connection where you start to like, usually it's like, I'll show you one card, you show me a card, where you start to reveal what's hard and share your pain. That is a skill that if we can respond kindly to one another and empathically when it happens, it leads to more intimacy. It makes it less lonely to be alive. And it moves us in the direction of the kind of culture we want. It's safe for kids. It's safe for like adults and for our vulnerability and for our joy and silliness. And it also, if your goal is to like, I want to commune with the spirit of the mosses and the rivers, you're like, I am deeply earthy, witchy, animist, and I want to commune with, the angels and the nature spirits. However, those ones are going to trust you more too. I guarantee you, like, I don't mean to speak for them, but I'm going to go out on a limb and speak for them, that humans who are in the confusion of thinking that they're in control and alone look dangerous instinctually to children, to animals, to spirits with any good sense. And humans who are tenderhearted and in a relational network of other beings and know that they're having impact on others. So they're walking with like mindfulness. You're not just crushing the like things on the path. Those humans have a different like scent or vibration. The beings who are already vulnerable. This can include other humans who experience systemic oppression. Like I don't experience a lot of that, but I'm also not like to give an example, just my own life. Like I'm not an entirely straight person. I'm either bi or I suppose queer. I don't know if I'm queer enough to be queer, but sure, I'm queer. Either way. And it sorry to have that old debate, but it means in interactions, just that aspect of my life experience has attuned me, especially to straight men and whether or not I instinctively, emotionally trust them. And I'm like, straight men who are not in touch with their heart, some part of me is just like danger. And straight men who are like heart on the sleeve, like tender-hearted, I'm like, oh, look at you, like, hi, we could even be friends. Like I feel instinctively safer around you. And people who experience way more systemic oppression or experience it, I don't even know if I experience it. I imagine that vulnerability is a trait that encourages trust. So, yeah. And the last thing is, the last plug I want to make here is that, as I've said already, like heartache and sorrow, they're just one of the primary colors of our human experience. And so if you want to know God, if you want to know the mystery, if you want to know the spirit of the earth, or however you like to talk about the thing that people mean when they mean God, no matter how you talk about it. But if you want to grow your embodied experience of that mystery as it is you and lives within you, this is one of the primary colors in the palette. It's one of the colors. It just is. It's present in all the cultures, and it is present in not just human form. And so we're not going to know ourselves. We're not going to know the sacred fully or more fully until we've logged in some time here. And not just been like, grief is that scary thing that occasionally comes and makes me feel out of control until it's gone. No, it's like respect to that, but there are ways to navigate within it and to choose to go put our feet in the water, even when it's not like coming for us. So the point there is just that it's good for us from like body to soul. And it's good for culture to be able to feel what's going on, to slow down and feel it. Yeah. And when we make a study of this, I know I feel like it's an unusual angle to come to this terrain. I'm saying like it's learnable. But when we make a study of it, we choose to prioritize it as a study. One of the things that we study in it, and I don't just mean it in an intellectual way. I mean, we train in it, I guess, is the alchemy by which pain becomes kindness. And it becomes compassion. And that's kind of what I meant about the character development piece, is you can have a lot of pain come at you. I mean, it will sooner or later. And whether or not it makes you a kinder person makes it all the difference in the condition of your soul after you died. If you're like, I'm dead and a lot of hard things happen, I'm mad about it, Spirit's gonna be like, okay, well, I see that. Where do you want to go from here? But yeah, so make a study of how the hurt becomes kindness, basically. Let's bring it to practice a bit. That's mostly what I want to say. And I'd like to guide maybe 10 minutes or so of practice, and then see. I imagine there are some questions. There's a fair number of folks on the call, but we'll see what questions folks have. But it's important always, and it's how, if a lot of you know where I'm coming from, but if you're new to how I approach things and how we do it in ancestral medicine, it's practice oriented. We can talk about a thing, and that's good. That's important. That's its own kind of practice. But then there's a need to bring it directly to experience, and to know things immediately and directly. So there's always, anytime I'm doing a talk or doing anything, there's going to be practice involved in it. So let's take it, 10 minutes or so, and I'll guide you through a basic practice of, So to begin, just bring your attention to your heart, your belly, your feet. Maybe you use your breath to do that, but be all the way present in your physical body as much as you're able. As you're sinking into your own space and presence, call with you to be present at least one aspect of the sacred that you already know and trust, like a guide or teacher in spirit, however you relate with the holy and the bigger reality in a way that you already know and trust. Let that be present with you so you're resourced. And from that place, take a moment. Take a moment to confirm that your personal space is clear from any interference or negativity. And then hold intent that there's a layer of protection and containment around your space. And from this place of being rooted in your body, connected, clear, and protected, take a moment and see if you can dial up the quality of being supported in spirit. Maybe it's that you're calling even more present those you already know. Maybe it's that you're bringing your attention to how it feels to be supported. But see if you can lean into that quality just a little more for a moment. And in a related way, see if you can also dial up or amplify the quality of ritual protection. Not from a place of fear, but just affirming that you're in a really safe and held space. So noticing how it feels to be in a relatively safe space, and noticing how it feels to be supported. And seeing if you can stay in touch with those things. Next, if you're open, call into your awareness just a little Doesn't have to be so intense. It's a short practice, but just a little, just one of the kinds of pain that you move with in the world. What's a kind of sadness and sorrow that's just part of your life experience? And in noticing that, I want you to notice it just a little while staying in touch with all the support. Not trying to heal or change or do anything, but share presence with this aspect of your experience while noticing that you're held and supported. There's not an invitation or there's not any push to go deeper into an experience. The invitation here is just to notice how it is to feel held and feel resourced and supported while being with your pain. And take another moment or two there and just acknowledge the forces supporting you. Acknowledge with tenderness whatever hurt or sorrow you move with. And yeah, just that, just noticing. And at your own rhythm, go ahead and thank the ones that are with you. See if there's, if there's anything that's important for you to know or carry with you, it's welcome. But yeah, otherwise thank them and shift attention out. And our time here, part of the invitation with the practice is just that sometimes we forget how available support in spirit, human, all kinds of ways is when we're with something difficult. And there's invitation to bring that relational felt awareness into how we are with our own sorrow and pain, and that sometimes just that will open things up in a new way. There's not I don't want to intentionally try to open things up a lot because of the context we're in, but that's the invitation, is just to notice that we're not alone when we're hurting, even if we feel alone. It's possible to notice the larger web there. Yeah. I want to make space for some questions. There's a question, is a bit provocative in a sense, but there's a question I'll engage in the chat that goes, seeing how pale my complexion is and how my voice is hoarse and I have to suppress coughing, why did I go ahead and teach today rather than prioritize my own well-being? That I'm modeling a masculine suck it up attitude. Why not take care of myself? So it's an interesting question. So I'll respond to it. For one, I do have a cough. Yeah, it's been a hard week. I'm a parent of 2 kids, and I'm a little depleted energetically. And I chose to still do the call. For one, the main reason is that I enjoy it. I enjoy teaching. So it's actually a win for me. It's nourishing. Like I feel more connected and more myself when I do it. 2, I think it's ableist to expect our teachers to always be healthy, and that we can only learn from people when they're healthy. Because you don't know my circumstance. I don't know your circumstance. Sometimes coughs linger. Sometimes, we have things going on. So I got bad lighting in here. I got this bad circle light. So it's probably making me look paler than I am, whatever it is. But I'm also tired. I have found that I see Tashia, the question. I'll go to you next. I found that sometimes the teachings are better when I'm not at my strongest, when I'm actually off my center. There's a kind of different energy that can come through. Another reason, a third reason, I guess, is that I need to support my family, and this is my job. I know it's taboo to say that with spiritual topics, but some people can't afford to just take off work every time they're not feeling awesome. And I'm one of those people, like most humans on Earth. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't take good care of ourselves. We totally should. But I'm trying to model authenticity and honesty in my response to the question. I mean, it's a provocative, but also a fair question. So that's why I'm doing it. I could choose to not work, but to me, it's not work. This is a highlight of my day. I enjoy it. So that's what I got on that one. And it's all right to be provocative too. Thanks for asking. Tashia, and help me if I'm getting your name wrong. It's important.
Hi. Yes, congratulations on getting my name correctly. That hardly ever happens. Thank you very much for your offerings and for your response to the last question. I'm calling from unceded Sinixt and Ktunaxa lands in British Columbia, Canada, where it's snowing nonstop for a few days now. So my question's partially answered by what you just shared at the end there, the practice. It's helpful. I'm going to try that. I just have a question about something I've noticed in my grief. I won't take long with the story, but like 4 years ago, I had a major health crisis that just completely changed my world. I still can't do any of the things I used to do. And I have a lot of pain as well. And what I've noticed is that in the times where I might have a couple days where I feel a bit better, I get really hopeful and immediately start planning my work and my trips and all these things I'm going to do when I'm better. And then the amount of grief I have when that passes is like fresher every time, it almost feels like. And it's really hard on me, like extremely hard on me. And so I just don't know, like I've almost got to the point where I don't want to have hope anymore because of it's going to be taken from me again and again. So I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on that.
Do you, I'm listening in if I feel like I have something useful on it. There's nothing immediately at the surface. So I'm curious to ask, maybe not if you're asking, but do you have a sense of it? Do you have a sense of like, I mean, it's clear what you're saying. It's kind of like like it's a fresh smackdown from the universe each time. So it's like it hurts more each time. And so it's clear what you're asking.
I guess I just didn't know about it. Like it felt wrong to abandon hope, but it's easier on me that way.
Part of what my curiosity, if we were to dialogue it out, I mean, we only have so much time here, but be like, what is really tapped in look like for you when you're in an energized, sort of more enlivened state? And what does it look like for you when you're in a depleted, more difficult state? And is there any common element to both? Is there like an underlying reality or like orientation, like kind of North Star anchor point that you can intentionally, it's like when you have all this energy, then you intentionally slow down, even though you could be moving. And so you intentionally slow down and find your center. Like, okay, there it is. Noted. And then when you're in a difficult place, you like animate a little bit to find, or however you find like ground in a big spiritual sense. And it makes me curious if there's a thread of continuity that can be like this rope between the kind of ups and downs of it. I don't know that it necessarily makes it easier, but it's possible if that isn't already present for you, that it could be a kind of inquiry that gives a little bit of like there's a rope through it at least, or there's some kind of underlying sameness, so it's not two different yous or whatever. I don't know. That's my first curiosity about it, but it could be that you determine over time that the harshness of the changes is worth it to not dampen your enthusiasm for when things are good. It's a really personal and tender thing to be living with, and I follow the question, and it's a good one to bring to guidance if you have ways of connecting with your ancestors or spirits, and see what they would show about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I will look for that. I don't currently feel anything similar between those two parts, the when I'm well and when I'm not. So I'll look for that.
That's the invitation then. If you haven't found that, I would see if you can find the common thread. Yeah, the earth beneath both of them. Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. Yeah. Somebody, I'll go to Felicia in just a moment. There's a question that I have empathy for in the chat. It is having a hard time feeling like their spirits that generally care and that want to support them. Okay, I read the question wrong. That's a differently good question. If the person who's asking can fathom that there are living humans who care and wish to support you, those are spirits too. Spirits is a kind of problematic, dualistic language for things. But what I would say about that is, if you're open to the possibility of it, what usually happens is you try on the possibility of it, and then that allows enough breathing room for experiences and data to come that reinforce the reality that we're not alone. Like, humans aren't the only form of consciousness. There's a lot of other things going on, and some of those other things are actually really benign and fantastic to be around. So there's not a need to focus there. You can dial up the level of felt human support, because humans are also spirits, either way. What I thought the question was kind of funny is like that there are harmful spirits, and my mind, I'm so cynical. I thought it was something about like, I don't feel safe or whatever. And if anyone is having harmful spirits around you, I'll answer that question just in case. Safety is so important to being vulnerable and accessing our tenderness and grief. And sure, things aren't ever going to be totally, completely safe, because it's Earth, and things are unpredictable. But if you want to be more intuitively opened or spiritually connected, sometimes being more boundaried is the way to go. Because there's a need to have not just like manufacturing a feeling of safety, because the best way to feel safe is to be actually safe. And it could be that there are factors of risk that you haven't accounted for previously. So to do a real inventory of like, are there energies or things or people in my space that aren't that great, that I need to tend to and clear out? And then once you've cleared them out, it's like, oh, all these scared, vulnerable aspects of what I am suddenly feel a little safer to come out, because it's a different vibe. I'm not living in the equivalent of a haunted house anymore. Some part of me can relax. So safety is really connected to vulnerability, and that includes in the unseen, spiritual, ritual, call it what you will, realms. So that's what I mostly wanted to say. Sorry, I misread the question. Let me acknowledge we're at time. I'm happy to hang out and engage in a few questions, but I will just briefly mention again that the course starting next week is focused on tangible skills for working with grief. How do we work with our voice? How do we work ritually with water? How do we resource with all of the other than humans and spirits and the earth and the others that can help us to access grief? And also, how do we hold grief in like a devotional way to go deeper in our connection with spirit? So we'll be looking at those different skills in the 4 lessons, and it'll be practice oriented. And join us if you want. That's happening. So let me make space for a few other questions. Felicia? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I I have been connected to ancestors maybe most of my life. And I'm in my early 70s. I'm 72. And I've recently had a health issue with my heart. And I realized that lady was talking about wanting to have her health back and getting her life back and so on, Tasha. And I can really relate to that. But what I'm relating to now is this idea of grieving parts of myself that have passed already. They're gone. And understanding that death doesn't happen once. It happens over and over and over again. And
that's right.
And this has been really it's been a gift to me to be able to acknowledge what's died,
Mhm.
how valuable it used to be, what kind of life it used to have, the feeling of gone, absence, not there, right? That's weird. And and the thing that the idea of becoming, like becoming again and again, like living again. And so there's an excitement in me and an innocence rising in me, a renewal of spirit for myself. Thank God those things died. I never would have had an opportunity to look at the things that are precious to me already, to light my load so that I could actually get on with some stuff I've been wanting to do for a long time. But yeah, it's that
That's awesome.
idea.
Yeah.
But I have been a death doula.
I could say a thing about it. I want to be a little mindful of time, but I'm with you, Felicia, in what you're sharing. So, yeah.
The thing is that I have been a death doula in a natural way when people have passed with me. I'm just natural at it, and I'm a spiritual initiator of innocence wisdom for newborn babies, so that they have someone to tell who they are and why they came. So I'm starting to realize the idea about when we're dying to ourselves, that our path is getting much more clear. It's like a diamond cutting, right?
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So
Let me
I'm
jump
not,
in and share a thing about it, if it's okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Did you feel like you conveyed the heart of what you wanted to get across? Yeah. I could reflect. Let me share a reflection on
Yes.
it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really clear and lovely what you're sharing. Traditions all all around the world in different ways talk about the death before death. And it's not that it's just one thing or one time. We were talking last night in the initiations course. We're getting later in the life cycle. And so the thresholds, initiatory thresholds that we move through are like more confusing and more subtle and stranger. But we were talking about when you actually have a really nicely worked through self, and even like people like you, or like your life is working, and then you're really nicely worked through self, assuming you arrived at that. For a lot of us, it's like, well enough, it'll drive, it gets you there. And but then that becomes what you have to give up. Like, wait a minute, I worked really hard to make this tidy self. And it's like, yeah, that's great. That's your ticket. That's your price of entry. You're going to have to let it go. For what? Be like, oh, we'll tell you after you give it to us. Like, oh, that's vulnerable. And so there's a way in which we are asked to die to who we've been, and not just in tidy ways, in really scary, vulnerable ways, for new things to happen. And I hear you. It's coming through clear. It's lovely. And there's a kind of like burial rites, if you will, for who we've been. Like really giving thanks, giving honor, giving respect, ancestralizing who we've been, so that we really like the insect molts and tends to eat the molt because it has protein. It's like, what's like useful about that to like energize where I'm headed?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thanks, Felicia. It's welcome. Yeah. Let me go to Jen, and then there's some good bits in the chat, and I'll eventually run out of steam here, but yeah.
Thanks for that, Felicia. That was really kind of you beautifully summed up my question and point, which was that that this inability to grieve doesn't allow us to be in the rites of passage of evolution and revolution, and keeps us sort of trapped in, as you said, our cocooned selves. So I have, I wanted to hear what you had to say about that, and you already said it, so thanks.
Cheers. Thanks. Nina, good to see you. There and saw me.
Yes. Hello.
Good.
Hello. Long time. Yes.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask about the this protection or being held in this space to grief, because I have much difficulty to feel the grief, to go there, to experience it. And now when you told to ask for the help person, I have always a lot of fantasy figures that are coming, and they really held me there, and I could stay in this feeling of loss. But something, and this was in this space, it felt safe. But something happened in my life a few weeks ago that I needed some help from a neighbor, and I went to ask for help, and the neighbor told me, no, he's not he's not going to help me, and he's not coming there, because if he helps me now, I will always be asking for help. And in that moment, I went into a space where I felt so vulnerable, so hurt, so hit, so violated, abused, everything together. And I didn't know how to keep it together, and trying not to feel. And I really felt unsafe, to a point that my home became unsafe.
Yeah.
That I felt like my home was possessed or something, because
I understand. Yeah. I can try to speak to it a little. I want to make sure I'm listening carefully. Did you feel like you shared what you wanted? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. How in this moment, I feel the still aliveness in what you're sharing. I wonder if you feel in touch in this moment of just this being a safe and welcoming space, and that it's okay what you shared, and like don't feel like you need to respond to that, but like kindness to the tenderness of it. And let me see if I can try to say a thing, then I'll check in with how you're doing. For one, we don't, like you said, sometimes we can be just totally fine, and then something happens, and then it's all the things, all of it's there. So that's totally how grief works. It's totally unpredictable in volume and intensity and timing and all of it. As a parent, one of the things that's important I've been learning, and parenting is humbling, my goodness, is sometimes you're going to mess it up. You're just going to be like, frustrated or whatever it is. There's, those moments where you're not at your best. It's okay to go back to your kids. It's good even to be like, sorry, I felt frustrated and I could have expressed that better. I'm sorry. How are you doing? Or whatever it might be. And I say that because we are also, it can be kind of like psychologically cliche, but there's real big wisdom to it, that we're parenting ourselves also, or parenting, reparenting and all that. And something can happen, and this like younger, vulnerable, maybe still impacted from earlier things, aspects of ourselves are suddenly like freaking out. So there's like a flooding of the space of old pain. And there's been moments where our child it's like spitting on me or like hitting me in the face. It's not like our usual mode of interaction. But moments I'm just like, what are you doing? Don't do that. But she's not regulated. And so it's like my job to like hold her and be patient. Like, I'm not gonna let you hit me. I got you. And but even if in the moment you're like, it's too much, and your adult self isn't able to like comfort and establish safety in the moment, the main thing to know is that you can go back to that event as an opening, an opportunity to get to know the underlying need and what got lit up by that. Because I mean, your neighbor's being rude and stingy,
Mm.
not very nice to be around in that moment.
Mm.
But you know, there's other layers. You know, there's more to it. You're like, ooh, that was a catalyst for all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You don't have to work with that in the moment. It's a gift, is what I'm saying. It's a very uncomfortable gift, but if you choose to see it as an opportunity and go back with support and with safety and with regulation and be like, hey, these aspects of, you know, I want to make sure the one who was really freaked out by that is doing okay now. I'm sorry I didn't reach out earlier, but I'm here now. Is there like, can, you know, peace?
Turning towards to my, like you,
Say again. Yeah.
like turning inwards, like this exercise we did earlier, and
Yeah,
take.
like that. Yeah, and that could be with calling your spiritual support around, doing a session with, if you trust that, with certain people in your life, but making the space for it to go back to that. It's an opportunity, this not often present one. I heard you say that it's hard to access grief.
Yeah.
And forward is definitely able to be a teacher about that, or like that's an in. It's like, oh, hey, I know where the grief lives. Looking for it, I know where it lives, but I need to trust you enough to tell you that. So then it's your job to establish trust with that part of who you are, which is the same work of establishing trust with all the other parts of the whole world that are vulnerable. It's the same pattern. Yeah. Thanks, Nina. How are you feeling? How you doing now? Do you feel okay by having shared?
I'm feeling okay now, but this every time when I think about this thing, it can, you know, the hurt comes up.
Yeah. Be so kind with yourself around it and know that there's a gift in there. If you're patient with yourself, there's a gift, there's an opportunity to get to know the place of hurt in a really gentle and different kind of way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe and just excuse me, one other question I would say. Anna, if you to us all, and
Hi, can you hear me?
okay, yeah.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to throw it out there really quickly. I kind of lost some trust with my ancestors because of how much of their grief was moving through my body. And I wanted to see if you had really quickly any like practices for rebuilding trust and setting better boundaries around like how the backlog of grief moves through me.
If you saw someone that you missed, imagine you're like a child, you've been separated from your parents, and you're in the rain, and you see them, and you rush up to them, but you're just going to give them a big hug, and you're going to get them all wet. And you're not even worried about the wet part. You're just happy to see them. And the dead are kind of like that. They're like the big wet shaggy dog sometimes. And we can be like, whoa there, I'm happy to see you. I'm gonna get you a towel. You're gonna be in the waiting room. I'm gonna like, you know, so that's all the boundary part of it. That's why I'm very like boundary when we get into ancestral work. But it's not reasonable to expect them to self-regulate. If you were a ghost, you would cling to your warm family. It's just what you do when you're hungry. You eat if you can. If you're cold, you just want to get warm. The ghosts are just snuggling up to our warmth. They don't have mouths in the same way. They can't eat the sunlight and earth of plants and animals. And so they cuddle up to us. Then it makes us ill and neurotic and all kinds of things, unless they're in a healed up state, and that's different. They're ancestors. So forgive them if you can. It's hard to be confused and to suffer. And what we often want when we're suffering is we want to be known. We don't necessarily want someone to fix it. We want to be seen and known. Like, I'm hurting. Can I tell you my story in hopes that you understand it? There's this whole industry called psychotherapy. It's really like good for that. Said as a therapist, I trained in that stuff, but it's not a bad, it's not a bad thing, but yeah. So the pain in the world is bottomless, really. And it lives. There's a story of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and in one of their manifestations has a whole bunch of arms. And the question is sometimes given, I think it's a Japanese tradition of Kanzeon, or anyways, Avalokiteshvara, let's say. And how does the Bodhisattva of compassion keep track of all those arms? And the answer is given that, like adjusting a pillow in the night. So there's like part of the wisdom in that is the way in which compassion, it's actually not the story I wanted to go with, but I'm going to add another layer. That there's a wisdom in that of the compassionate action is not scripted, it's not forced, it arises spontaneously. And in the stories of how that deity got the many arms, some of them it's through assisting the dead. And then as soon as this whole hell world of troubled souls is assisted or cleared out, like all these others flood in. Again, all these others flood in. And the deity starts growing more arms, more arms, more arms to help more and more and more and more and more. And the sense is that the work is really inexhaustible. And so there's a need to position ourselves for the long haul with that, which means a combination of boundaries and steady love and compassion. I think my whole career is around helping the ghosts, and I don't relate with them directly. I'm like, sorry, it's not good for my longevity. You need to go through this process. That's the line is over there. Yeah. Thanks. That's good what you're bringing. Having groused about ableism earlier, I probably should rest now. And the question was fine earlier. Thanks everybody. There's a lot of good stuff in the chat. I just don't have a way to get to all of it. And so respect to people who wrote in something there. Be good with yourselves. I hope there's something useful from the time tonight. Hope to see some of you for the course next week. Appreciate it. Take good care.